Um, Virgo, yes, they have regrets. Deep, gnawing, keeping them awake at night regrets about how things ended between you, about what they said or didn't say, about choices they made that they can't unmake. Their regret is real. I need you to know that first. This isn't about dismissing their remorse or pretending they don't feel bad about what happened. They do. They're carrying weight. They're replaying moments. They're torturing themselves with hindsight that shows them exactly where they went wrong. But there's something else, something underneath the regret that you need to understand before you interpret their feelings as transformation. Something that changes what their regret actually means and whether it translates into anything that serves you. And I'm telling you now, because when they reach out, and they will reach out, their regret will be the first thing they lead with, and it will feel validating. It will feel like the apology or acknowledgement you've been waiting for. And you might mistake it for genuine change when it's actually something more complicated than that. So let's explore this. What they regret, what they don't regret, what you must know before their remorse confuses you into thinking anything fundamental has shifted, and how to discern between regret that leads to growth and regret that's just uncomfortable emotion seeking relief. Take what resonates here. This is about seeing the full picture beneath surface remorse. You remain in control of your response, always. This is simply an invitation to understand what their regret actually means before deciding what to do with it. Let me start by describing what they regret specifically, because understanding the exact nature of their remorse tells you whether it's deep or shallow. They regret losing you. They regret the consequences of their actions. They regret that you're not in their life anymore. They regret the emptiness where you used to be. They regret how things ended, the harshness of the final conversation, the way you looked at them the last time you saw each other. They regret the loss, the absence, the void, the fact that something they had access to is now unavailable. And that regret is genuine. I'm not saying it's not. They're genuinely uncomfortable with how things turned out, genuinely missing what you provided, genuinely wishing they could rewind time and do certain things differently. But here's what you must know. Here's the critical piece underneath the regret. They regret the outcome, but they don't necessarily regret the behavior that created the outcome. They regret losing you, but they might not regret the specific actions that drove you away. They regret the consequences, but they haven't necessarily examined the character flaws or patterns that generated those consequences. Let me say that differently. They're sorry they lost you, but are they sorry about who they were that made losing them inevitable? Are they sorry about the disrespect, the lying, the taking you for granted, the choosing others over you, the breaking promises, the being unavailable, the whatever specific behavior it was that finally made you walk away? Or are they just sorry that their behavior finally had a consequence they don't like? Because there's a massive difference. One is genuine transformation, the other is just discomfort seeking relief. One means they've done internal work, the other means they want you to come back so they can stop feeling bad. And you need to know which kind of regret this is before you let it influence your choices. Now, let me talk about what they don't regret. And this is what you must know. What they absolutely must understand before their reach out confuses you. They don't regret who they were during the relationship, at least not deeply enough to have become someone different. They might regret specific moments, specific actions, but the core patterns, the fundamental ways they showed up that created ongoing hurt, they haven't actually dealt with those yet. They don't regret their priorities that put you second or third or last. They don't regret their inability to communicate. They don't regret their emotional unavailability or their commitment phobia or their selfishness or their lack of follow through. They regret that those things finally cost them something, but they haven't done the deep work of examining why they operate that way and choosing to become different. And this is critical because when they reach out with their regrets, when they apologize, when they say they made a mistake, you need to ask, what have you actually changed? Not what do you wish you'd done differently, but what internal work have you done to ensure you won't repeat the same patterns? What therapy have you been to? What self-examination have you engaged in? What specific behaviors have you actively worked to transform? Um, Let me slow down here because I need to clarify something. I'm not saying their regret is meaningless. I'm not saying you should dismiss it entirely. Regret is the beginning of change. It's the discomfort that can motivate growth. But it's only the beginning, it's not the change itself. And many people stop at regret. They feel bad, they apologize, they promise to do better. But they never actually do the work to become better. They just want you to come back so the discomfort of regret goes away and they can return to who they were before. So the question isn't whether they have regrets. The question is what they've done with those regrets. Have they used them as fuel for transformation? Or are they just carrying them around, hoping you'll relieve them of the burden by forgiving and returning without requiring actual change? Drop a comment if you've experienced this before. Someone coming back full of regret, apologizing beautifully, promising change, and you gave them another chance. And they repeated the exact same patterns within weeks or months because the regret was real, but the transformation wasn't. Because I think many of you have lived this cycle, and understanding the difference between genuine change and regret seeking relief is what breaks the cycle. You know what else I'm picking up on? The specific thing they regret most. And it's usually not what you'd expect. It's not the thing that hurt you most. It's the thing that made you finally leave. That final straw, that moment where you said, I'm done, and actually meant it. That's what haunts them. Not all the moments before that led to that moment, but the moment itself when they saw in your eyes that you were actually gone. They regret pushing you past your limit. They regret not realizing how close to the edge you were. They regret the specific action that became the breaking point. But all the actions before that, the ones that brought you to the edge in the first place, those don't carry the same weight in their mind because those didn't have visible consequences. You stayed through all of those. So in their mind, those were somehow acceptable. And that's the problem. They regret the thing that finally made you leave. But they don't necessarily have equal regret about all the things that should have made you leave but didn't because you were too patient, too forgiving, too hopeful. Let's sit with this for a moment. What if their regret is entirely self serving? What if it's not about you at all, but about them? What if they regret losing access to what you provided? Your support, your love, your stability, your belief in them. What if they regret the discomfort of your absence, the loneliness, the having to face themselves without your constant validation and caretaking? What if their regret has nothing to do with recognizing your value and everything to do with missing what you did for them? What if they'd feel this same regret if anyone left them? Hmm. Not because they lost you specifically, but because they lost the role you played, the function you served. And if that's the case, if the regret is about losing a function rather than losing a person, does it matter that they're sorry? Because you're not a function, you're a person, and you deserve to be missed as a person for who you are, not for what you provided, for your irreplaceable humanity, not for the convenient role you played in their life. Let me offer you guidance about how to handle their incoming regret fueled contact. First, don't let their emotional discomfort become your responsibility to fix. They feel bad. That's their feeling to manage. You don't owe them relief from their regret. You don't owe them absolution. You don't owe them a chance to feel better by apologizing. Their regret is theirs to sit with, and sitting with it long enough is what creates real change. Second, if they reach out, ask direct questions. What specific work have you done on yourself? What's different now? How have you addressed the patterns that hurt me? Don't accept vague promises. Require concrete evidence of change because words are easy. Changed behavior is what matters. Third, watch what they regret versus what they defend. When they apologize, notice what they take responsibility for and what they justify or minimize. That tells you how deep their self examination has gone. If they apologize for the final blow up but defend all the behavior leading up to it, they haven't actually learned anything. They're just sorry they got caught, or sorry you finally enforced consequences. Fourth, don't rush to forgive just because they feel bad. Forgiveness isn't about relieving them of guilt, it's about releasing yourself from bitterness. You can forgive in your own time for your own healing without giving them access back into your life. Their regret doesn't create obligation for you to do anything. Fifth, trust your body's response. When they express regret, when they apologize, notice how you feel physically. Does your chest relax or tighten? Do you feel relieved or trapped? Your body knows whether their regret is genuine or manipulative before your mind figures it out. Listen to those signals. Let me ask you one more thing. What would genuine regret actually look like? Not just words, but actions. It would look like them doing work on themselves without you, going to therapy, reading books, examining patterns, making changes you don't even see because you're not around to witness them, becoming different not to win you back, but because they recognize they need to be different regardless. Genuine regret leads to transformation, not just to apology. So if they haven't transformed, if they're just sorry without being different, their regret might be real, but it's also insufficient. It's not enough to rebuild on. It's not enough to trust. It's just sad for both of you that they hurt you and feel bad about it, but not bad enough to actually become someone who wouldn't hurt you again. Here's what you must know. Here's the thing underneath their regret that changes everything. They want you back. That's what the regret is driving toward. Not just acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but restoration of access. They want to stop feeling bad, and the way they want to stop feeling bad is by having you back in their life, forgiving them, giving them another chance, making everything okay again. And here's the trap. If you come back just because they're sorry, if you let their regret override your memory of why you left, you reset the cycle. They feel better, the discomfort of regret goes away, the consequences of their behavior disappear. And without consequences, without sustained discomfort, there's no motivation to actually change. So they slip back into old patterns, and eventually you're right back where you were. Except now you've also taught them that regret is all it takes to get you back, that they don't actually have to change. They just have to feel bad temporarily. Take what resonates from this reading, leave what doesn't, and remember that you remain in control of your boundaries, of what you accept, of whether their regret becomes a bridge back or just noise you acknowledge and move past. They have regrets, real ones, but there's something you must know. Regret without transformation is just discomfort seeking relief. And you're not responsible for relieving anyone's discomfort at the expense of your own peace and protection. Trust your inner knowing. Trust that you left for good reasons that their regret doesn't erase. Trust that apology without changed behavior is manipulation, even if unintentional. Trust that you deserve more than someone who's sorry. You deserve someone who's different. And those aren't always the same thing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to see clearly even when regret sounds like love. Thank you for valuing yourself enough to require real change, not just emotional apologies. You're exactly where you need to be. Seeing the full picture, understanding what their regret actually means, prepared to respond wisely instead of just reactively when they reach out with their remorse. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Stay clear, value yourself, and remember, they can be sorry and you can still choose not to go back. Both things can be true simultaneously. Bye, Virgo.